Okay.
Good.
Very good. Let's open the meeting. And this is the special meeting of the LDC for our, looking at, let's see, we have the salaries that we have discussed. And I think is that part of this meeting, Steve or Jeremy?
Yes, it is. We have three items. Do you want to do roll call and accept the agenda first? And I can read the agenda.
We'll do that in a second. Yeah,
Okay,
I will do that in a second. I got to switch back and forth with screens here. That's why I had to ask you.
Got it. Okay,
so
the three items are,
let's,
you want me to just list out the resolution so everybody knows?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, just so you know what the agenda is, transfer of occupancy tax funds to Franklin County, lease of commercial office space in Tupper Lake, and employee compensation.
Okay, now that's my question. Employee compensation, Maria, is not on the special meeting for March 16th.
It was added yesterday, so you can accept that with the agenda at the beginning.
Right.
Okay, so go ahead and call the roll.
Okay. Sherry Boye,
Present.
James Ellis,
Here.
Stephen Ehrman,
Here.
Madeline Fleury,
Present.
Justice Martin is not present, Archie McKee.
Here.
And we have one seat to be determined. And also present, Maria Bourgeois and Jeremy Evans.
Very good. Thank you. Next item is to accept the agenda or to change the agenda or to add to the agenda as necessary. We have employee salaries to add. Anyone
I'll move
opposed to that?
No, do you need a motion to add that or is it in?
It's
Well,
in.
it's okay. Let's just add it.
Okay.
Justice has just joined the meeting too, so that can be indicated.
Okay, great. So, motion to amend the agenda to add employee salaries. All
Okay.
those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay? The ayes have it.
Did we have
Next
a
item, lease
motion,
of commercial
Jim?
office. Hello, I'm sorry.
Did we have a motion for that? I just heard the vote, but no motion.
Yeah, motion made by Steve.
Steve, did we have a second?
A second, Archie.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thanks,
Go
Art.
ahead.
Well, let's do it again. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay? Ayes?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Aye. Nays? Okay, let's add it to the agenda now. You want to do that as the first item, Jeremy?
No, I want to do that as the third and final item. So
Okay,
the first
so let's go
first
to
item
lease of
would be
commercial station.
Resolution 7, transfer of occupancy tax funds to Franklin County.
Okay. You want to do that one first?
Yes.
Okay, it's at a different place in my email. So, transfer of occupancy tax funds to Franklin County. Go ahead and lead us through that, Jeremy.
Do you want to do a motion first, motion second, and then I can, or do you want me to just?
Well, just go
describe
ahead. And it's on the agenda, and only things on the agenda can be acted upon. So, go ahead.
Okay. So, as we've previously discussed, we've been preparing to transfer occupancy tax funds back to Franklin County. I'd shared with you a
Right.
draft of this information a couple of weeks ago, but we were still just verifying numbers and also waiting for any last minute expenses to clear through our when we pay bills. So that's
Right.
all done. And so the report that is provided in the packet, we believe to be accurate. It shows the the amount of revenues we received over the course of 2 years, which is $1.2 million approximately. And also the expenses that we have incurred implementing the tourism marketing plans and also the grant programs. And so those are itemized by year and type of expense on page 2 of that report. And so we are recommending, when you look at those revenues and expenses, that we should be transferring back to Franklin County $741,601.11. I think it's important to point out that one of the reasons that Franklin County, or one of the clear goals for Franklin County when we took on the tourism contract was for us to be good stewards of the occupancy tax funds. There was a desire to make sure that there was a clear understanding of where and how money was to be spent, and that unused funds would remain available for future use. And I think as far as that is concerned, we've done an excellent job in kind of keeping those funds available, being stewards, good stewards, and to close that loop, we can return these funds to the county, and then they'll be able to apply those to their current budget and also future budgets as they implement this year and future marketing plans.
Very good. Thank you. Questions, anyone? Just to point out to you that this is this profit and loss items that you see here in this report are only for tourism. So,
Correct.
Yeah. Just remember that. Thanks, Jeremy. Questions, anyone?
Jeremy, this is Archie. Is the county in agreement with this calculation?
I sent it to them on Friday, I believe, to Donna and Phil and Lindy Ellis as chair of the Economic Development Committee, just as a heads up for their review. And I've not heard any feedback one way or the other.
So what do we do next, Jeremy, as far as the county's concerned? Do we have to transfer the money only after we hear from them, or how do you want to handle that?
Well, I think that so the timing is good, that if the board approves this today, I can this can be something I bring up tomorrow when I meet with the Economic Development Committee. And if I think after that, if there's no comments, I think Maria would be planning to do checks next week, right, Maria?
I was actually planning to do checks tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. So yeah. Oh, that's right, because I'll be there in Malone at the signing.
Right.
So unless we hear anything tomorrow, my recommendation would be move forward and get this taken care of.
Good.
And there's no
Very
reason.
good.
I mean, in good faith effort, if there's something really substantial one way or the other that we all agree upon, both parties, we can correct that later.
We're in discussion, right?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm obviously all for this passing this resolution. I'd like to just make sure everybody understands that going to this last item where we talk about what we received and what we spent, we're returning the balance, unspent balance. That unspent balance is there largely because the county legislature itself did not authorize substantial expenditures. And they define the amounts that were going out in each of the grant programs that we are administering. And they were the ones following the recommendations of the Tourism Advisory Committee that defined basically how much would be spent out of this fund. So we did good management of the fund, and we were following the dictates of the legislature itself in terms of how much was to be spent. I think that's just an important thing to note, because the appearance here is that we had this contract for a few years and really didn't spend as much as should have been spent, but that wasn't our call. Our call was to administer these funds and make sure the money they authorized to be spent was spent and everything else was well accounted for.
Thanks, Steve.
That's a good point.
Good point.
Thank you. Any other questions?
But do
Oh,
we
I
have
just-
any,
I'm sorry,
sorry,
who do we miss here? Go ahead.
I just wanted to
Archie.
thank Steve for bringing that out.
Okay, you're welcome, Archie. I appreciate it.
okay. Have any unfulfilled contractual obligations that we entered into during the period of time when we were responsible for delivering tourism under any of these programs?
No, the only, all like private consulting contracts or anything like that that we had, there was nothing long-term, and those were all, we are free of those obligations. The only one that was pending was Adirondack Research for trail mapping. But that's what the board approved that in January. And then when the contract was not renewed, I reached out and informed them of the county's decision. And so we did not actually ever execute that contract. So we're not under any obligation. The only other type of obligations would be grantees, grant awardees who were awarded funds but needed to complete projects and be reimbursed. But we notified all of those grantees that there was a transition and provided Phil's contact information. And I know that he has reached out to them as well. So that we had a couple payments to grantees in January that was one of these last things we were cleaning up. But anything beyond will be reimbursed directly by the county, and all those grantees are aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
I notice, Jeremy, this is Jim. I notice that we have some I Love New York matching funds.
Yep.
Can you explain that to everybody?
So we received I Love New York matching funds for 2 years, and this is a balance remaining. So this will also be transferred to the county and will either be kept or sent back to the state. But we agreed that we would transfer that over and we'll close that account. It's a separate checking account.
Right.
So Maria will be doing a transfer from this I Love New York account into our regular checking account, and then she will make one check out for that full amount to the county.
And just
Very
for
good. Go ahead.
just for clarification, that 32.8 that was in New York matching funds, the spending of that also would have had to been authorized by the legislature and the TAC and the legislature, or the legislature on advice of the TAC too, right? That was not discretionary money for us, or was it?
Well, we had a small budget for marketing that this could have gone towards, and
Okay.
we used some of it, but not all of it.
Okay,
And we didn't receive
Right.
it until August or September,
okay,
which made it more difficult for us to spend it all.
We're
Okay.
square with I Love New York, and
Yes, we
matching
are.
funds thing is there. It's in terms of we didn't spend it because we didn't have to spend it.
Well, were there any expenses, like even in relation to Sean Kittle, up until the end of the contract, has that all been covered and taken care of out of the tourism?
Yes.
and that came out of the administrative set aside from this overall
Right,
amount of
yeah,
money.
you can see that in that table for the administration in 2022 was $16,000, and that was mostly salaries for Phil and Sean.
Good.
In the month of January until January 28th.
Good.
Okay, any further questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Do we have a number for this resolution?
It's number 7.
I'll make a resolution. I will move the adoption of resolution 22-7.
I'll second.
Second.
Archie.
Archie, seconds.
Yes.
Any further discussion? If not, the chair will assume the motion has been moved. All in favor of motion number 7, 2222, please signify by saying aye. We have to do a roll call though. Maria?
Sure, okay, this is for resolution 2022-07, transfer of occupancy tax funds. Sherry Boye,
Yes.
James Ellis,
Yes.
Stephen Erman,
Yes.
Madeline Fleury,
Yes.
Justice Martin,
Yes.
Archie McKee.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Thank you. Next item.
Next item is,
Occupancy space.
yes,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Next item is resolution 2022-8 to execute a lease for commercial space in Tupper Lake. This is in reference to leasing as yet undeveloped space at the OWD redevelopment project in Tupper Lake for a co-working and entrepreneurial center like we have in Saranac Lake. We submitted an application to the Tupper Lake DRI process for DRI Downtown Revitalization Initiative process for $400,000 to build and fit out space for a co-working and entrepreneurial space in Tupper Lake. And so if we were to be successful in receiving those funds, we could apply those towards the cost of fitting out the space at OWD. And the proposed lease anticipates that and has an option for reduced rent as a result of us putting that grant funding into the project. It is also contingent on us receiving those funds. In other words, we do not have to carry forth, we do not have to go forward with the lease if we do not receive DRI funds.
Good.
This
That's a,
doing
I'm sorry.
and I wanted to point out also that this is not a project that would get underway next month. It requires significant funding from a variety of sources. One of the biggest sources of funding for the overall redevelopment project is housing tax credits. The company is submitting an application for those tax credits at the end of the month. And if all financing comes together over the next few months, then we could anticipate construction starting maybe towards the end of the year, but really just into 2023. So this resolution to execute this lease is requested now because an executed lease shows commitment both to private financing partners and also for the housing tax credit application, and helps the application process for the developers.
Good.
Any questions?
Yes,
Did this have a resolution?
I have one.
Number two.
Sorry. I,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was finding you on my, toolbar here and unmuting. I remember when we first talked about this, the price was a little outrageous. So I'm not necessarily comfortable, putting that motion on the floor open-ended that way, because I get what you're saying, Jeremy, completely, but I wish there was something we could add in there that was a little more specific, because if we're saying you can lease this and it ends up 5,000 a month, because remember, I can't remember the figures exactly from that call, but I do remember it was a lot of money and we weren't comfortable with that. We entertained giving you the authority to have the discussion with them, but I'm not very comfortable making a motion like this is very generic. And that's just my 2 cents.
Well, so Sherry, that you're right on bringing up those questions. I apologize because I didn't get the draft lease out to you yesterday with the updated agenda. But there is a draft lease that I sent out earlier, and that concern we raised. And the lease shows a significantly reduced rent if we apply the aforementioned grant to the cost of renovation. So in exchange for providing funds to renovate the space, the developer would give us a substantially reduced rent, which starts at like $1,500 a month, and it's not that higher rent. Specifically as kind of our negotiation with the cost concern that you raised. Does that answer your question? So the resolution is not supposed to be by itself and open-ended. It's supposed to be tied to that lease that I had emailed earlier.
Yeah, I did just pull it up, but obviously I didn't have a chance to look through it all.
Right.
And
Yeah, I was waiting for some comments back from Matt McCardle. So that's my fault on the bad timing.
so I gotta go back and find this. There it is, board packet. So the resolution says, seek, develop, and operate in a business, agreed. Propose lease to approximately, it doesn't say, I mean, does it have to say on the attached? Whatever. your
It
estimate
It
or
certainly
whatever?
should or could. Yeah. Yeah. So if you wanted, I mean, if this is approved, the lease should be made part of the record. But if you wanted to call that out specifically, that would not be inappropriate. So
I,
it doesn't seem open-ended.
right, and I would feel, I don't think I'm still muted, am I? No. I would feel more comfortable if we could have that added in there, the verbiage somehow with proposed lease attached. I don't know how
Yeah.
legally.
No, that's a really good suggestion. What you could do is under the therefore clause, say the board of directors authorizes the CEO to execute the attached lease with OWD development. And that attached lease would go with the resolution. And I think it would be as simple as that to do what you're asking.
Perfect. Thanks.
So I think the only verbiage, the only change to the wording would be, instead of it saying to execute a lease, you could say to execute the attached lease.
Right.
Good.
Yeah.
And we should note, because I read your memo that you sent this morning, Jeremy, that we also have the right, without any repercussions, to decline this lease or to pull out from the lease before construction starts, and there'll be no startup of construction until early 2023. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, well,
And that was the question I was going to ask. So, as long as we have a drop dead clause in there, I'm not really, I think if we can get this project going, that's very important to this community to get that project going.
right.
Unless and until we say, okay, we're interested and we'd like to do this. However, we have an escape clause. That's all that matters.
And
Right.
we're more than just a potentially interested party if we sign this lease, which helps them in terms of getting the tax credits, helps the project, to move forward. And I know it was also noted at the last meeting that we had a few ideas of alternative spaces that we were going to look at. So it gives us a little time to figure out if that works out, and we could pull out with no repercussions if need be by early 2023. That gives us 10, 11 months at least to figure out if we're totally in or not.
Right.
Good.
Yeah. I think, as you recall, this is a project that I have been working on with village officials for several years, trying to figure out something to do with how to tackle OWD.
Yeah.
And it culminated with a developer with the vision and the means and know-how to actually do something pretty remarkable at that site. You'll also recall that and I don't remember when we did this, early last year, approved a $350,000 basically working capital bridge loan for this project. So we not only did that behind the scenes work, but we also have invested pretty significantly into this project. And I think this is another way to, in good faith, invest in the project, but also invest in a, kind of another important thing, which is in our entrepreneurs for Tupper Lake. And I think this could be a great place and a great fit for doing an entrepreneurial co-working space. However, there's a lot of unknowns, and the board has brought up some good questions and things we want to look at. So the way this has been structured allows us that option if we choose to take it, but we're also doing what we can to support the project.
Good.
I just have a
Any
couple
other points?
comments, if it's
Oh,
okay.
go ahead, Madeline.
Yeah,
Go right ahead.
yeah, no, I was reading through the lease and whatnot, and one of the items is, you have to pay a certain percentage of the common area costs to maintain. Is there any idea what that could possibly be? Because I know if it's like an HOA kind of payment, those can be quite hefty. And that would be also rolled into whatever your monthly lease cost would be.
Yeah, that is a good question, and I don't have a good answer for that. It's one of the things that Matt McCardle raised, because if we're renting 2% of the building, but then they decide they need to paint the entire 105,000 square feet someday, surface area of the building, what would that look like? So that's certainly something that we need to look at. And I indicated to the developer that there were some questions like that we'd want to discuss with them over the coming weeks and months.
The other question I had was, there was something in there about a $400,000 grant. Was that something that the LDC was going to obtain to improve the space? Is that?
Yeah, that's that DRI grant request. Yeah, so we submitted that to the Village of Tupper Lake last Friday. And it'll be several months before we know if that is a project that actually gets funded. And this lease is contingent If we don't get that, then this lease is contingent on that. So that's what that's referring to. Yep.
Okay, because I saw in some of the other paperwork that was sent out previously where they had like an allowance of like $65,000 or whatnot for tenant build out. Is that what they called it? Was that
Yeah.
like when you buy a new home and you get like X amount of dollars for certain features? Is that? And then
Yeah,
anything
that's
above
right.
that. So
Yeah,
this
it's-
$400,000 grant, that would be in lieu of doing that, or?
Right. There's different ways to do it, but we basically, one way is that we just turn it over to them and tell them, here's like, it needs to be move-in ready. So everything's got to get designed and finished, and so that we can just move in according to our specifications.
Because the way this is set up now, I believe that this is not exactly move-in ready space. It's just pretty much a blank box.
Right.
It's pretty good amount of space, like 40 by 60. How much space do we have in Saranac Lake at the Cary?
Right now, we have less than 1,000 square feet at the Cary. And our proposed space up on Broadway will be very similar to this, probably a little bit bigger, I think, is what is estimated.
3,000 something.
Yeah.
Are we bursting at the seams in Saranac Lake? We definitely need more space. We have a larger call for greater usage in Saranac Lake.
It's very seasonal, but in the summer, yes. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't.
I think everybody has to keep in mind, we attract a huge seasonal population here. Our population goes from around 6,100. We go up to close to 18,000 people. And the people that come here would love very much to be able to stay here longer if they had a place where they could get online and working space for requirements that they may have in their business or in their offices. So this isn't just for people in Tupper Lake. And I think that's something that we got to really think about here. If we're trying to help Tupper Lake and Saranac Lake to become 12-month-a-year places, then I think we got to be able to provide to the degree possible. I'm not saying we got to roll ourselves out and let the truck run over us. We have to provide to the degree possible the services that people would require. You want to hear a good one? The New York Times is not delivered to Tupper Lake except during the months of June, July, and August. You can't buy a New York Times in Tupper Lake. That gives you an idea of how people treat us. And I think it's important that people in Franklin County realize that even though you may be in another part of the county, we have certain needs down here, a lot of which are not met. They're not filled. So I just raised that question.
Well, so first of all, Jim, it sounds like you want us to put into this lease that the New York Times will be delivered to the space. So maybe we could just add that in.
I wouldn't care if I used the New York Times toilet paper. That's how much I believe in that. So there are people who suffer shock
what
when they
we've
get here and
talked
they
about.
can't find a New York.
Yeah. What we've talked about is, and there's still a lot for us to discuss as a board on if, how, and when. But
Right.
the concept here is we started with Saranac Lake. We've got an opportunity with Tupper Lake, and we're looking at options in Malone to do the same kind of thing. And what we've been doing is taking the opportunities that are presented to us to strike in each location. And with Tupper Lake receiving a DRI award and OWD redeveloping with a real plan for a mixed use redevelopment, the opportunity is here now for us to look at. but yeah, we've got some ideas on downtown Malone to do something similar too.
Well, I
Because-
think this is important.
The
Why
need
is it
is
for true to-
there.
Saying about developing 19 towns in Franklin County, we got to take the chances when we see them. And as of right now, if this doesn't work out at the OWD, nothing ventured, nothing gained. But I do think to help the developer get his ducks in a row and get his financing in a row, we got to do what we can to help. I mean, anybody that's driven through Tupper Lake and sees that factory in the middle of town with broken windows and all sorts of drabness about it, I think we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we pulled out of it and they lost their tax grants. So,
Well, you all have asked some really good questions over the last couple of months as we've discussed this, and some of them we've been able to address, and then we've built in safeguards into the lease agreement, and there's time for us to be able to look into the other questions and address other concerns.
are you, Jeremy? A question: Are you comfortable with this, or do we have to have a resolution in favor of doing this thing?
The resolution's in front of you, and the only modification I would recommend is what Sherry brought up, which is
Yeah.
changing it to execute from execute a lease to execute the attached lease.
With the date, the citation of the date of that lease.
Yes,
That sounds, I'm
the attached March 16th
good.
lease.
And I'm good with that. I've got questions. And Madeline raised a good one. We talk about proportional spending on improvements and things like this. I'm real curious about how that would be, if a roof would be really expensive for that. And how do they do proportion? Is it about amount paid into the, in terms of lease, of monthly lease costs, or is it proportional to the space that you have, or some other measure? So there's a lot of stuff that would need to be defined. The question about they have the ability to assign the lease, but we don't. Was that mean if we had a user of the workspace that wanted to be able to take a 200-foot office and have it for their own, and we had the space to allow a few offices within that space to go out like that? Is that an assignment of a lease? Is that a sublease from us? Is it a lease with us? And, I'd like to know the answers to that, because I'd hate to have that be a restriction if we thought there was a good use. They may look at that, or doing that as competitive to their being able to lease their own space to somebody like that. So there's questions like that, I think, that should be answered, but I'd feel comfortable with, as the date approaches, for us to say we're either in or out, that we would have the ability to go back with them and say, here are our concerns. How do we rework this lease to make it happen? We have a resolution at least that holds the space for us and helps them to get their required funding or authorization for tax credits. A lot of questions still.
Yeah. Jeremy, are you comfortable with what we've raised as far as the verbiage that they have to go into the attached lease, so to speak?
Yeah, this whole discussion's been very good and very comfortable, yes.
Okay. Anyone else with questions? Well, we will introduce a motion to adopt resolution 2022-08.
As amended, right?
Yep.
Amended.
Are we,
As amended to say the attached March 16th, 2022 lease.
Yes.
thank you.
I will second.
Motion?
Oh, I'll make that motion.
I'll
Okay,
second.
motion is being made by, can't see
Sherry.
your beautiful faces.
Sherry,
Sherry? Good, second?
Steve seconded.
I'd second, yeah.
Roll call vote.
Okay, this is for resolution 2022 -08 to accept the resolution as amended to say add attached lease dated 3/16/22. Sherry Boye,
Yes.
James Ellis,
Yes.
Stephen Erman,
Yes,
Madeline Flurry,
No,
Justice Martin,
Yes.
Archie McKee. Archie
Art?
McKee.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yes, again.
motion adopted
As amended.
as amended.
Very good.
As amended.
We've reached the end of our agenda, and based on the fact that this is a special meeting, unless there are any questions about the date of the next meeting, which will be 23 March.
the compensation,
We still have
Oh,
the,
salaries.
yeah, we have, that's
That's the trouble.
resolution number 9.
My
Employee
mistake.
compensation. Yep.
Thank you. Any particular presentation that you want to
No,
make, Jeremy?
this is in accordance with what we talked about last week, and
Right.
this is related to Russ Kenyon and Kelly Brunette, and I would ask for approval of it. It's retroactive to January 1st, as previously discussed, and then we will do another resolution related to Maria next week when we have an IDA board meeting.
Very good. Any questions, anyone? If not, the chair will assume that the resolution, a motion to adopt the resolution will be made. Motion to be made. Who will make it?
I will make the motion to adopt resolution 2022 Maria 9.
09, yep.
9.
9.
Second.
I'll
Is there a
second,
second?
unless somebody else wants to
Second
jump,
by,
I'll second it.
if any further discussion? If not, in the absence of discussion, the chair will assume the motion has been moved. Roll call vote, Maria.
Okay, this is for resolution 2022-9 employee compensation. Sherry Boye,
Yes.
James Ellis,
Yes.
Stephen Erman,
Yes,
Madeline Flurry,
yes,
Justice Martin,
Yes.
Archie McKee.
Yes.
Motion is adopted.
Thank you. There being no further business.
Hold
the
on
next
one
meeting will be-
second, Jim. Jeremy, you asked me to
Okay.
remind you to talk about the regular meeting next week and the open meeting laws.
Yeah, so I think where Jim was going is that we have meetings scheduled for next week for all 3 agencies, 1 PM on Wednesday, the 23rd. As of today is the last day that we are authorized under New York State law to conduct fully virtual meetings, which means, and there's no indication that will be extended. I just got word back from Harris Beach on that, actually. And so what that means is that next week we need to make sure that we are fully complying with open meetings law that had been somewhat altered because of the COVID-19 emergency. So what we are going to do is, and Maria is going to send this out right after the meeting, we're going to advertise that the meeting is being conducted, held at our offices at the courthouse, but also at the downstairs conference room at the Hotel Saranac. So we will have 2 physical locations available for board members and members of the public to attend our meeting. But we will also make it we will obviously live stream it on YouTube like we have been doing. And if any board member wants to attend virtually, we still can, but we have to, you have to be on video because
Right, have to see your
it
face.
can't be just audio over the phone or over Zoom. It has to be on video. So that's the one change. That's one of the changes. So we can't have just a virtual meeting anymore. So we'll have the 2 locations available. Both are fully accessible, and we'll be able to communicate and just let us know if anyone wants to attend virtually. Just make sure you've got the ability to be on audio
On
and
video, yeah.
Okay. Can I just add
Any
one
other
thing?
business?
If I could,
Go
Jim,
ahead.
I just mentioned something about next week's meeting. The members of the governance committee are, I'm acting chair, and it's also Madeline and Justice at this point. I'd like to have a meeting of the governance committee before our meeting next week. So I'm going to ask Maria if she could do a doodle poll or figure out, we could possibly do it Friday or Monday. I don't know if there are days that people know don't work for them, but it could be relatively short. But we have to fill a few vacancies on the committees, and we should bring a slate to the full board. And we'll need to look at who should be. We have an acting chair at this point. We should appoint a chair. We should appoint a vice chair. We have an assistant secretary position that has to be filled, or assistant treasurer position because of Mike Doran's resignation. And we have a few holes in our committee. So I'm going to just cross out the people who are no longer involved in these various roles. And I'm going to scan that and send it to the committee. And then we could talk, and we can start plugging some names in there and come up with a slate that we could bring to the full board next Wednesday. Does that work? Okay, that sounds great.
Yes.
Are there days that
Right.
people won't work for them? If we said either Friday or Monday, perhaps?
I don't know right now. I have to look at my calendar.
Okay, I'll ask Maria just to send. It could be Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and just to give us some options there. It shouldn't take any longer than an hour, I wouldn't think. All right.
Now can we do that via video, or is that a in-person meet?
Well, I think we do that via video. I think it'd be easier. We're still legal to do that, Jeremy, right?
Committee meetings, yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Yeah, you're
So
not
we can
making any
certainly
motion.
Send it out.
Well,
Whatever you want.
we're gonna make a motion, a committee motion, basically to recommend to the full board.
Right, but your recommendation
Well-
would be made in the actual board meeting, so
Yeah.
that would be the open meeting part, yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank
And
you.
Maria, as we discussed, you and I discussed earlier, that'll be a standing agenda item for every regular board meeting.
Yep, committee
Report of the committees.
reports, yep, absolutely.
And if the committee has no report, that's all you have to say, no report. So.
That's
Any other
great.
questions? Chair will assume that we've done our work, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Motion made
Justice,
by
justice.
Justin. All right, second?
I'll second. It's the easiest motion to make.
Yep. All those in signify by saying aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Hi.
thank you.
Ayes have it.
Okay.